أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
حقا ولا الحمد لله. الحمد لله فاطر الوجود من العدم، وجاعل النور من الظلم، ومخرج الصبر من الألم، وملقي التوبة على الندم. فنشكره على المصائب كما نشكره على النعم، ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الأكرم ذو الشرف الأشم والنور الأتم والكتاب المحكم خير ولد آدم، الذي بشر به عيسى ابن مريم ودعا لبعثته إبراهيم عليه السلام حين يرفع قواعد بيت الله المحرم. فنصلي ونسلم ونبارك على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. إن أصدق الحديث كلام الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد بن عبد الله، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة في الدين بدعة، وكل بدعة في الدين ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله وحسن عبادته. All praise is due to Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. And peace and blessings be upon His last and final messenger. He who Allah guides will never be misguided, and he who Allah misguides will never be guided. We begin today's khutbah with Sayyidina Abu Hurairah. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah was a very poor man. He was one of Ahlul Suffah. Ahlul Suffah Adiyaful Islam. He was so poor that he was called Ahlul Suffah, the people of the wool. And he used to live in the Masjid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he would only eat when people would feed him. So one day he was so hungry, he had a rock on his stomach, and he stood on the street waiting for someone to come. And the first person he sees is Sayyidina Abu Bakr walking. So he sees Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and he comes to him and says, "Yo, Abu Bakr," and he asks him a question. And he narrates, "I asked him a question not looking for the answer. I asked him in hopes that he would say, I can't answer you, we're on the street. Come with me, let's go to my house. And then he must feed me something and answer my question." Sayyidina Abu Bakr answers my question and walks away. And then again, another person is walking, and it is Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. And I come to him and I again ask him a question. Not in hopes for the answer, but in hopes that he would tell me, "Come, follow me. I'll take you home and we'll answer your question at home, and then he'll feed me when I'm at his house." Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu answers his question and walks away. And then the next person walks. And this person is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And before Abu Hurairah can open his mouth, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sees him. And Abu Hurairah narrates, he says, فَعَرَفَ مَا فِي نَفْسِي. He knew what is in my heart. He knew what I was going to do. He said, "Abahir, ta'al Abahir. Come, follow me, Abu Hurairah. So he takes Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. And he comes to his house and he asks permission to enter. And he enters. And he asks one of the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, أَعِنْدَنَا شَيْءٍ? Do we have anything? She said, someone has given us a cup of milk. كوب من الماء, كوب من اللبن. A cup of milk. So Abu Hurairah got excited. A cup of milk. I'm going to have something to drink. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Ya Bahir. قال لبيك يا رسول الله. أو Abu Hurairah. Yes, O Messenger of Allah. ادعي أهل الصفة. Go call all the people of Ahl al-Suffah, all the people that are sitting in the masjid, all the people that are poor, call them. Abu Hurairah says, he narrates this hadith himself by telling us. He says, I wish that the Prophet ﷺ just gave me the cup of milk. One cup of milk. It would have just sufficed me. But now Ahl al-Suffah are going to come. And the Prophet ﷺ is going to ask me to give them. Meaning, I'm going to be the last to drink. But I have to obey the Messenger of Allah. So he goes and calls Ahl al-Suffah. And they come and they sit in the house of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ requests Abu Hurairah to give each one of them. So he would give one cup to the first person, and that person would drink, the hadith says, حَتَّى يَرْتَوَى حَتَّى ارْتَوَى, until they are satisfied. And Abu Hurairah would take that cup back and give it to the next person. And so on and so on. Until everyone has drank. And then he gives the cup back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And the Prophet looks at Abu Hurairah and he says, Ya Abu Hurairah, بقي أنا وأنت. There's no one except me and you, Abu Hurairah. قال لبيك يا رسول الله. Yes, O Messenger of Allah. قال اشرب يا أبا هريرة. Drink, O Abu Hurairah. So Abu Hurairah drinks. اشرب يا أبا هريرة. Drink, O Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah drinks. 4 times, drink, O Abu Hurairah. Until Abu Hurairah says, Ya Rasulullah, Wallahi ma laha min mastak. There's no more space. I can't drink anymore. I'm satisfied. I'm done. For the Prophet ﷺ sharab al-fadla. He drank what's left. Why did I begin my khutbah in this fashion? Many a times we think of situations in the dunya perspective. We look at things from a dunya perspective, from a secular perspective. We think that what is coming to us will only come by logic. And we forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners. We forget that what is written for us has already been written. What is decreed has already been decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our responsibility is effort. And this is the sad reality why, especially in today's day and age, we see so many unhappy people. Everyone seems to not be happy with their situation. And this reminds me of a poem. The poet says, صغير يطلب الكبر وشيخ ود لو صغر وحال يشتهي عمل وذو عمل به دجرة ورب المال فيه تعب وفيه تعب من افتقر وذو الأولاد مهموم وطالبهم قد انفطر ومن فقد الجمال شكى وقد يشكو الذي بهر فهل حار ما الأقدار أم هم حيّروا القدر. He says, the one that is young, I can't wait to get old. We see so many young youth today here in the masjid. I can't wait till I'm older and I start driving. I can't wait till I'm older and start working. I can't wait till I'm older and I leave the house or I travel or I do this. And then we see the old. I wish I was young again. And they make this poem, يا ليت الشباب يعود يوما. I wish I was young again. I wish I had my youth again. And the one that is working, I wish I could resign. I wish I could leave my job. And the one that is not working, I wish I had a job. The one that is married, may Allah make it easy for them. And the one that is not married, I wish I can get married. It's as if no one is happy, no one is satisfied with the situation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. And because they are not satisfied, because they haven't found that rida, they have lost their sense of happiness. And I understand it from non-Muslims. I understand why non-Muslims are not happy. That makes sense to me. But I don't understand how we as Muslims are not happy. How could we not be happy when the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bayna aydina? It's with us right here. We can read the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How could we not be happy? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala في القرآن يقول من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فيحيينه حياة طيبة. Whoever does righteous deeds, male or female, man or woman, and is a believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will surely grant him a good life. So if you want a good life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the solution. He has given you the formula to have a good life. He specified 2 criteria. The first is iman, belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the question becomes, do we have belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if we do, then the second one comes into play. Is amila salihan, and does righteous deeds. And for a deed to be righteous, it needs 2 things. The ulama have dictated it requires 2 items for a deed to be righteous. First, it has to be and look what the Sharia has compelled it to be. Has to be and look what the Sharia has compelled it to be. And of those are 2 types. The Sharia has compelled us to do fara'id and sunan. Things that are mandatory. Things that you have to do. And things that are preferred to do. Those are the only things that can be righteous deeds. Everything else can't be righteous. And this is why it's an obligation on every single one of us to begin with our fara'id. To begin with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mandated you to do. And to learn the ahkam, the rules of the fara'id. And we stick to them by the T. And this is something that I heard from one of the scholars. He was saying, you can do more than the faridah, but that amal will not be accepted. And he gave an example. He said if someone is fasting, and he begins his fast at sunrise, but instead of breaking his fast at sunset, he decides to break his fast at Isha. If he does that, deenan, out of religiosity, he said, oh, I want to do this because religiously I have to do this. That day of fasting would not count. Because you are not fasting the way the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told you to fast. Now if that's what happened with siyam, what about the greatest of faridas, salah? Many of us sitting in this room don't know ahkam al-salah, the prohibitions of salah, how to pray. And if we know, sadly we haven't taught our children. So that they're praying and they don't know what they're praying or what they're doing. How can we expect them to find happiness and find success in this dunya and in the akhirah if we haven't done our part as adults and as parents? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a hadith qudsi, ما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أفضل مما افترضته عليه وما يزال يتقرب عبدي إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه. There is nothing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there is nothing that I love more than for my servant to come closer to me with the fara'id. The things that I have mandated with salah. And it's not when they continue to do the mandatory. Now when they do the compulsory things that are not mandatory, the sunnah, the preferred, they continue to do the preferred and come closer to me with the preferred until I love them. So for many of us, the question becomes, we have to ask ourselves, how are we doing with our mandatory actions? How are we doing with our salah? Once we've realized how we're doing with our salah, how we're doing with our zakah, how we're doing with riba, and staying away from what is haram, then and only then can we ask, why am I not happy? But how can we ask this question, how am I not happy, if I am not even giving what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked of me? And the ulama have said, but the ulama have given us a criteria, a principle. They said, مَنْ أَصْلَحَ مَا بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ كَفَاهُ اللَّهُ مَا بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ النَّاسِ. For those of us that perfect the relationship between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will make the relationship between you and others easy. So the question again, how are we doing with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How are we doing with our salah? That is the first part of Amalun Salih. But what's the second part? The second part is al-ikhlas, sincerity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ. And they weren't commanded to do anything except to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with true sincerity. And sadly, this is something that falls into many of us on a daily basis. Even those of us that do righteous actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in a hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يَقُولُ أَنَا خَيْرُ شَرِيكٍ مَنْ أَشْرَكَ بِي فَهُوَ لِي شَرِيكٌ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ اخْلَصُوا أَعْمَالَكُمْ لله فإن الله لا يقبل من العمل إلا ما خلص. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, I am the best of partners. And if anyone has a partner with me, then I am no longer their partner. The scary part of this hadith is that these people are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala but bringing with Him a partner. The question becomes for many of us, I don't do that. I don't bring any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sad reality is for many of us we do. When you do something hoping that someone will praise you because you did it. When you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in hopes that you hear someone say, Kareem ibn Kareem, generous, the son of a generous. Or mashallah, look at your prayers, so righteous. And when you don't hear that, you're a little hurt. I just did this action, I wasn't appreciated. And we have this in our terminology in the West. I wasn't appreciated. Then the question becomes, who did you do the action for? For the appreciation or for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So a reminder to all of us, every time you do an action for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, try your best to cleanse your heart of that situation. To say, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Irregardless of anyone sees me, irregardless of anyone's watching, irregardless of anyone says anything. And realize that it's never too late. Your age does not matter. Your time left does not matter. What matters is that you start today. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, سَبَقَ دِرْهَمٌ مِئَةُ أَلْفِ دِرْهَمٌ. $1 beat $100,000. Sahaba asked, how, O Messenger of Allah? He says, that individual, all he had was $2. So he gave $1 for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the other had millions, and he gave 100,000. So do righteousness even if it's a little bit, even if it's just marginal, every single day you try to improve. Then and only then will we truly find happiness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all happiness in this life and the next. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. We talked about the importance of contentment and the ways to find happiness in this life and the next. And we begin the second part of the khutbah by talking about a parable. It was narrated that a man had a very strong horse. And this horse was a pure breed. And he was very pleased with this horse. And one day this horse left him, and he was very sad. So his neighbors came and said, I'm sorry for your loss. This must be a difficult time. He said, why do you think it's a loss? How do you know this is something that is bad? A few days go by and the horse comes back with wild horses. And the neighbors again come back. Congratulations! You have more horses! This is amazing news! So he says, how do you know this is amazing news? Where are you getting this information from? A few days go by and his son goes in to play with these wild horses and he breaks his leg. And they come back, the same neighbors come back. Oh my God, this is terrible news. Your son just broke his leg. How do you know this is terrible news? A few days go by and the war starts in the city. And every young, able-bodied individual needs to go to war. And they said, oh my God, congratulations, your son doesn't need to go to the war anymore. Why did I say this story? Why did I say that? This parable goes on and on and on in the same fashion. Because our limited knowledge as human beings, we can't tell what is good and what is bad. And the situation that we have right now, we think it's good, but it is bad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَيَدْعُ الْإِنسَانُ بِالشَّرِّ دُعَاءَهُ بِالْخَيْرِ وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ عَجُولًا. We ask Allah, oh Allah, please, I want this, thinking that it is good, when it might not be. Or, oh Allah, keep that away from me, when it might be something that is good for you. So instead, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for khayr. Oh Allah, bless me with what is khayr, with what is righteous, with what is good. And don't worry about the outcome. The outcome is not in our hands. What is in our hands is the effort. That is our responsibility as Muslims. And the Prophet ﷺ gives us glad tidings. He says, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلَّهُ خَيْرٌ. Unusual is the situation of the believer. All of their affairs are good. إِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ وَلَيْسَ لِذَلِكَ لِأَحَدٍ إِلَّا لِلْمُؤْمِنِ. And this is for no one else except for the believer. The believer is the only one where their actions are all khair. He says, إِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ سَرَّاء شَكَرْ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. If something good happens, or he deems that is good, he is thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the good that's in our lives. وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ ضَرَّاء صَبَرْ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. And if something that is difficult, a calamity befalls them, be patient. That is truly better for you. And we conclude, and I know it is very difficult, and now I see a lot of parents that will conclude with this. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, some narrate that he is the 5th Khalifa of the Mu'mineen. He was sitting on his deathbed, and his cousin comes to him and he says, أوصي يا أمير المؤمنين. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, when he died, they said he only had 18 dirham, $18 to his name. He says, أوصي يا أمير المؤمنين. Give wasiyah, O Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, I don't have anything to give. I have nothing to give my children. He says, I will give you, his cousins, I will give you $100,000, dirham, and give that to your children. He says, keep it. He says, my children are one of two people. He says, إِنَّ بَنِيَّ أَحَدُ رَجُلَيْنِ إِمَّا صَالِحًا فَاللَّهُ يَتَوَلَّى الصَّالِحِينَ وَإِمَّا دُونَ ذَلِكَ فَلَا أَكُونَ أَوَّلَ مَنْ أَعَانَهُ عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ. He said, my children are one of two people. Either they are going to be righteous and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the righteous individuals, or they're going to be other than righteous, and I will not be the first to support them in their destruction. This is a reminder to us as parents, Because it is difficult. Sometimes we see what is haram and we think, it's for my son, it's for my daughter, it's okay. They need it. I'm going to do this because my kids need it. Know that this will not benefit them in this life or the hereafter. Know that what you are doing will not change the rida, their acceptance, their contentment. So teach them that contentment. Teach them that rida. What is our homework for the week? How are we going to change this ilm and make it into amal? The first and foremost thing is change our mindset. Have a paradigm shift. And it begins with learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His names and attributes. How can we have despair in Allah if we know He's Ar-Rahim? If we know He's Al-Wadud? How can we think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we won't get rizq, we won't have food for tomorrow if we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Razzaq? How can we allow ourselves to take money that is haram or do something that is haram if we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Qawiyyu Al-Aziz? So start by one name a week and do it with your children. I see many children here today. Take your children and offer them one name, one attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala per week and live with that attribute. Number 2, read the Quran and the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I shared in the group, in the daughter group, if you're not on it, please come and join it. I've shared the seerah of Muhammad in Arabic and in English. Please listen to the seerah in whatever language is easier for you. And see how the Prophet ﷺ had rida in all aspects of his life. The Prophet's life, if you were to look at it from a secular perspective, he should have been depressed his entire life. He was born without a father. His mother died at the age of 6. None of his boys lived. His grandfather died when he was 9. Yet subhanallah, he was known as Bassaman Dahaqa, constantly smiling. Because he had the rida and contentment of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for him. So if you want to have that same rida, that same happiness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had, learn his seerah. Follow his seerah. Number 3, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you rida. This is a blessing. To have rida, to have contentment is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it can only be attained by dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us all. Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt, wa afina fi man afayt, wa tawallana fi man tawallayt. Allahumma hdina wahdi bina waj'alna sababan liman ihtada. Allahumma hdina wahdi bina waj'alna sababan liman ihtada. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر لكم وأقم الصلاة